Welcome everyone to Israel Beyond the Headlines here in the Israel Government Press Office. It is my honor to welcome Michael Dickson, Executive Director of Stand With Us Israel. Thank you for being here, Michael.
Such a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Michael is one of Israel's leading public diplomacy and advocacy professionals with more than 2 decades of experience defending Israel on the international stage. As Executive Director of Stand With Us Israel, he has played a central role in combating anti-Semitism, countering misinformation, and strengthening Israel's presence across global media, academic institutions, and international forums. He has represented Israel in hundreds of international media appearances, advised government officials and diplomatic missions, and led strategic advocacy efforts during times of crisis and conflict. Michael is a senior fellow at the Center for International Communication at Bar-Ilan University, and he was appointed to Israel's Spectrum Forum of leading executive directors under the age of 40 and is the recipient of the prestigious B'nai Zion Prize. And he's the co-author of the book Is Resilience, What Israelis Can Teach the World, written together with psychologist Dr. Naomi Baum and published in 2020, which explores Israel's unique national resilience. And Michael has been recognized internationally for his influence in Jewish and pro-Israel advocacy, including being named the 14th most influential person on Jewish Twitter by the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. In 2025, he was formally recognized at a ceremony in Israel's parliament by the Knesset Caucus for Public Diplomacy for his unwavering commitment to defending Israel and the truth during the October 7th war. So,
very nice intro. Thank you very much.
Of course. And also, me and Michael actually know each other.
We do. Full disclosure.
Yeah. I'm friends with Michael's son. So
yes.
Shout out to Yoav.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Michael, can you tell me a little about your life before you moved to Israel and what brought you to make Aliyah and move to Israel?
So I was born and raised in the UK to a family that lived there for a couple of generations before that, moving from Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. I was brought up in a proud Jewish home where Israel was central. We would always come vacation to Israel, and Israel was very important to us. It's something that we understood to be part of our Jewish identity. It was indivisible from that. And so Israel was played an important role in our lives. When I got married, had 2 young kids, one of them was my son Yoav, it was natural for us to move to Israel. Now that was in 2006, summer of 2006, at the time of the Second Lebanon War. We were interviewed by no less than 2 national newspapers in the UK, The Guardian and the Daily Mirror, asking us why any self-respecting British citizen would want to move to a war zone. And that was 2006.
How is it to move to Israel during a war?
Yeah, I mean, it was, honestly, I think it was more stressful for our family than for us because it felt very natural for us. You have to remember that this is like Israel pre-Iron Dome as well.
Wow.
So those missiles were really falling and the north was evacuated at the time. It wrapped up just at the time as we were making Aliyah. And so we came to Israel post-war. And when I was interviewed by those news journalists, it was almost difficult to explain because they were like looking at me in consternation as to why anyone would want to move here at such a time. And I was like, this is the most natural thing in the world. So for us, it really was natural and we've never looked back.
Amazing. They didn't understand that like deeper like meaning and connection that you had to Israel.
Yeah, we had a great life growing up in the UK, a full life as a British citizen, a full life as a Jew. But, it's natural for us to have that pull towards Israel. And of course, that permeates every aspect of our existence.
100%. And did you ever experience anti-Semitism growing up in London?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think probably most Jews did. There wasn't a pervasive atmosphere of anti-Semitism. So for instance, when I was a kid, I was in the public library and the children's library, and some older teenager came up to me and like whispers in my ear, Jew bag. I always wore my kippah, so I was always visibly Jewish, but I did it in public transport, public events, in the city. I always was visibly Jewish and I never had any problem with that. We were always worried about sort of very far right anti-Semitism. And of course there was the threat of terrorism, But as I got older, that continued to grow. And so now you can't really compare the UK that I grew up in with the way the UK is now. And we always had security, and no one kind of batted an eyelid that, Jewish schools and synagogues needed security. But now, of course, it's a different level. And so actually, before leaving the UK, I worked at a high school, Jewish high school called JFS. It's been there since 1732.
Wow.
And I was there as their director of informal Jewish education. So I was there to kind of enhance the Jewish life and the pro-Israel life of the school. And I remember I was there on 9/11, and I was just kind of like starting my career then. And on 9/11, as news came through to London about what was happening in New York, it was afternoon because it was like around 9 o'clock in New York. And kids in the school were like in a bit of a panic because it was quite unprecedented, such a terror attack. And then they said to me, sir, in England, they call your teachers sir, right? Not like in Israel.
Not like in Israel.
Where they call them whatever you like. So they said, sir, they've hit the Pentagon. They've hit the Twin Towers. Are we next? So I kind of like diffuse that with humor because like, yeah, sure. Okay, so the terrorists have on their list, we're going to do the Pentagon, and we're going to do the Twin Towers, and then we're going to do this school.
And then
That's
JFS
it, right?
in
JFS
London.
in London. But actually, when I thought about it, it was quite telling what they were asking me because it showed a real sense of insecurity that Jews and young Jews have. They actually were fully honest about their assessment that perhaps our school was the next place to be hit. They thought that a Jewish school could be a target on a day when there was like this huge event of international terrorism. And that says a lot about how Jews were not safe then and most certainly are not safe now.
We always had this feeling of not like 100% feeling secure in...
Without a doubt. And you can see that there's no other minority that has to live how Jews do. The school I worked at had these, one gate. It was like airport security in Ben Gurion, a gate with a checkpoint, and then these like breeze blocks everywhere, these concrete blocks so that you couldn't drive a lorry bomb, and then these kind of things that would come up from the ground if they needed to stop a terror attack, and then another gate and full security. And, who lives like that? Only Jews. And for some reason, for decades, that's been normalized and accepted, and it shouldn't be.
Yes, it's a scary reality that what Jews have to live in, that they have to put, so much security
Right.
just for a Jewish day school.
Yeah, they used to, there was like a staple of Jewish comedy in movies that, Jews were like insecure, right? Or Seinfeld or whatever, like they have the insecurity. But when I talk about Jewish insecurity, I'm talking about actual insecurity, an inability to secure yourselves. And, very few minorities have that, if any, and certainly to the level that Jews do in what are meant to be Western, democratic, civilized societies.
And can you tell me how Stand With Us was created and where it's at today, as well as how did you start working with Stand With Us?
Yeah, okay. So Stand With Us is celebrating a milestone in the next year, 25 years. And so we started in 2001. The early 2000s, as you know, the bad days of the Second Intifada, so-called, a terrorist war against Israel, cafes blowing up, buses blowing up. It really was a scary time to be in Israel because you didn't quite know where the next attack was going to come from, pre-security barrier. So you really didn't know. And so one of the most egregious attacks during that time was the killing of two boys. They were murdered in a cave in Tekoa, Kobe Mandel and Yosef Ishran. They were, they're playing off school and they didn't come home. And so when their bodies were found, they had to be identified by their dental records because they'd been bludgeoned to death, stoned to death by terrorists. And so as that happened, it was like so many terror attacks are now kind of misreported or turned upside down in the media. So Stand With Us was founded in Los Angeles, and in the LA Times, they almost blamed those two young boys for their own death. That's how it kind of was reported. Well, they were settlers. Well, kind of rationalizing it.
It's hot, like sometimes you like in disbelief on how they turn around the story. It's
Yeah.
like, how did you even think of that?
Yeah.
How can someone even turn around such a tragedy that they turn it around.
And that's how it's reported. So people get their first record of events from things like that. And so for the people who became the founders of Stand With Us, Rose and Jerry Rothstein and Esther Renza, they saw that reporting and they were sick and tired of how this had all been, how events in Israel were being portrayed. And they gathered a bunch of people together in their living room and said, what are we going to do to make a difference? From different parts of the religious spectrum, from different parts of the political spectrum. And they didn't like the answers that they got when people, when they were saying, what is being done, it seemed like not very much. And so they formed what became Stand With Us. They started by putting educational materials in their shul, in their synagogue on the High Holy Days, just to inform their own people. And then people were saying, well, who really needs help? And it's students on college campuses. And so they started getting educational materials out in their campuses in the California area. Long story short, we grew West Coast to East. We realized, and then internationally, we realized that campus is almost too late. So you want to help and support students on campus, but also high school and even earlier years education. We formed a legal division to give legal support to students who are, fearing their grades being marked down as a result of being Zionist or facing anti-Semitism, violence on campus. And we grew. And so we're now on 6 continents. We are not just there for young people, but we're there also for the community. We've become a movement for Jews and non-Jews who want to fight anti-Semitism and support Israel around the world. And with social media, we've grown exponentially, all around the world, which is really amazing. I came to Stand With Us a few years in. I mentioned to you I was working at JFS in the high school. And there's the reality TV show that Donald Trump became famous on called The Apprentice, right? Mm-hmm. So in America, you had to be the best business person, the best entrepreneur to win his favor and become The Apprentice. That was the name of the game for the show. Now, what you may not know is that when Israel took that format onto Israeli TV, you didn't have to be the best entrepreneur, but they call it Hashagrir, the ambassador, and you had to be the best ambassador for Israel. So a friend of mine had recommended that I see this show, and I did. And so I thought this would be great as an educational tool. So I went out to Israel, I met with the program makers, and I said, can we use the format? And they gave their permission. And so we created an educational program in the high school where in the final years of high school, 8 boys, 8 girls would compete to be the best ambassador for Israel. They would sell vacations on the street in London. They would get op-eds published about Israel. They would debate, and we would watch their journey, film it. And I was like the Simon Cowell character that would then, kick them out.
Seeking your next One Direction.
Yeah, basically. And we found them, and it was successful. And so basically, when we started that program, I wanted it to be, we played out this like reality TV show on big screens in front of all of their peers. And we needed an educational program to kind of back that. And I found a new organization called Stand With Us that I thought had the best educational materials. Long story short, I found them, they found me, and we sped up our plans to make Aliyah, and I came out to head them up here in Israel.
So you started Stand With Us in Israel?
Correct, yeah.
And how was that to bring something that was more adapted for international Jews that are living outside of Israel? How did you adapt that to being inside of Israel, like combating anti-Semitism inside of Israel?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, the question gives the answer, which is that Israelis are part of the story. First of all, obviously you have tourists coming through. So now we have a Stand With Us visitor center in King David Street. We host over 10,000 people every year, groups, individuals, tourists. And of course, while they're here in Israel, is a great time to get them energized and send them back home so that they'll then speak out on Israel's behalf. But Israelis are also part of the story. And so we set up programs here in Israel, the Stand With Us Fellowship, which operates on Israeli campuses to train Israelis to be future ambassadors and leaders for their own country. And then Tevel, which operates on the high school, which your sister is part of, which is 10th grade students and onwards, training them to understand how the world views Israel and how they can respond in an effective way. And actually, in this environment that we live with social media, it's such an equalizer, right? You can be a kid and have an influence. And so we want Israelis to understand how they can engage with the world and show people what the real Israel is. It's so important. It's part of the story. And that's why it's so important to have such a Stand With Us presence here in Israel. Plus, of course, we are on the ground so we can give people news and factual analysis of what's really going on the day-to-day, because we're here.
100%. It's so important. And also the work that you do with the younger generation to educate them on, because for us, we all live here, and it's so, it comes so easily to us, but when it actually comes to having to explain to other people, wow, we have the right to live in Israel, it could be hard for like people, for the younger generation, because it's granted to them that they live in their country,
right?
And you shouldn't have to explain yourself, but we do. So
you shouldn't have to explain yourself, and often it's in a stressful circumstance, right? It's under pressure.
Yeah,
people are pushing back against you. They're saying the most egregious things. They can be tweeting things or posting comments on your TikTok, and it's like really horrific to have to deal with. Well, how do you deal with that? How do you maintain composure? How do you stay true to what you believe in, make your case in an effective way, and understand who your audience is? These are complex things. And so it's not necessarily, the conversation you have around your Friday night table is the same conversation you have when you get into a cab with someone when you're on vacation in New York, or that you'll have with someone on social media. You need to understand where they're coming from. And also, you spoke about the misreporting of Israel. They've been exposed to that. So how do you understand the context in which you're dealing with? It can be complex, but Israelis are the best at it once they have their little bit of finesse and training. They have so much to say. And so that's part of our story and the things that we do.
Do you recommend like the younger generation responding on TikTok and Instagram to the anti-Israel? Because on one hand, you want to fight back because you don't want to leave their false accusation just hanging there. But on the other hand, is it worth it? Do you think that you should even start going into it? Is it worth it to try to change their minds? Because I think a big thing is like all the younger generation in Israel or Jews around the world, we're all on social media and we all see the anti-Israel propaganda, and it's hot. Like, what would you say to someone young? Like, should they respond to it, or should they?
It's such a great question. So we often break things up as kind of like a 10-80-10, which is like, let's say 10% of people on one side are pro-Israel, 10% are anti-Israel, might be bigger, spoiler, and 80% in the middle are kind of like unsure, don't know anything, persuadable. My question would always be, we're always thinking at Stand With who are we trying to influence? So the 10% of antis, we're not trying to influence. The 10% of pros, we're trying to give them the information they need to reach into that 80% in the middle. So I would apply the same principle if you're responding on social media. You're not there necessarily to influence the person who posted. You might, it's possible. But that person is, if they're enraged in order to post bad things about Israel, they're probably a lost cause. However, if you think that by responding, you will reach the 80% in the middle who are either engaging in a different way to that post or are just watching, then it's worth it. That's always how I decide whether I'm going to engage with something. Sometimes I'll have, really influential anti-Israel, anti-Semitic personalities, send comments at me. I'll engage with them, not because I think I'm going to change their mind, but because there's a great amount of people that are watching. And those are the people whose hearts and minds we have to fight for.
And it's interesting because, I think a lot of the younger generation, they'll watch a TikTok and then they'll look at the comments to kind of see what everyone thinks about it. And then they'll, make up their mind on what
those
they
posts
think.
where people are like, I'm here for the comments.
Yeah, I'm here for the comments.
Right.
I'll subconsciously do it. I'll always look at the comments when I watch a video. So
just think the influence you have.
You can actually get to that 80% if you're commenting and people see your comments. And
exactly. So I would say don't hold back. Support Israeli celebrities and personalities with positive comments. Push back against anti-Semitism, because exactly as you said, you never know how many people are going to be watching and will be influenced by you.
100%. So we're fighting two wars There's the physical war on the ground, and there's the social media war. And Stand With Us is on the front lines of the social media war. And as we know, the Israeli army had to re-gear after October 7th to fight the physical war on the ground. So was Stand With Us prepared to battle the war on social media? And what did you have to change? How did you manage that?
So we were early adopters of social media for a long time, and we've diversified and now appear on multiple platforms. Our reach is in the billions post October 7th. And so we're very proud of that reach. So prior to October the 7th, we had done various drills, simulations of what could happen in Israel and how we would respond.
Wow.
Now, I won't say we predicted October 7th. We did a number of crazy and I hope they never happen situations. But
maybe you guys are like the secret spies.
no, of course we're not. We get accused of it. Get accused of everything. But
you seem a bit too ready for these things.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing. We didn't predict October 7th, but I think we did predict an October 8th scenario, meaning all of that crazy pushback that we saw immediately afterwards. We knew what was going to happen.
Crazy.
And so in that sense, we were prepared for those things. We have the benefit of having our social media operation largely based here in Israel, so they can really get credible information from the front line, from emergency personnel and other sources, and they can give it out straight away to the public in a really clear, credible, and immediate way. And then, of course, in addition to the online, we also have a real-world operation that, as we mentioned, is in multiple cities across the world. And so we can leverage those two things together to get information to spread faster and to also, have campaigns where we push back against anti-Semitic activity and we can get results. And so we leverage those two things together all the time. And in that sense, yes, we were prepared, but we do it as a movement, meaning we need everyone, all hands on deck, to then share that information. And what was really gratifying was that we have multiple celebrities who came forward and shared Stand With Us content. The Kardashians shared, Kris Jenner and others shared Stand With Us content. Justin Bieber shared Stand With Us content.
I think I remember it was like the Stand With Israel post that you saw it all over social media after October 7th.
Exactly right. And so we're very proud of that. We're very proud of our reach. And since then, we have multiple prominent people who've shared Stand With Us on their feeds. And, I hope it continues.
And if you guys are predicting anything more anytime soon,
you'll be my first call.
Amazing. So I remember I actually went to a Stand With Us event or talk right after October 7th. And she warned us and she said that right now, Israel hasn't fought back against Hamas. And everyone's posting, we stand with Israel and supporting Israel. And she said that once Israel retaliates and tries to get our hostages back, everyone's going to flip it around and go against Israel, meaning that you guys already knew the drill. You guys knew that once Israel was going to defend itself, the whole world was going to go against us. So with that said, was there anything that today surprises you that happened, whether it's multiple countries recognizing Palestine as an independent state, or the false accusations that Israel's committing genocide, or the multiple terror attacks against Jews, not Zionists, overseas? And is any the rise of anti-Semitism or the propaganda, did any of this, with knowing that this was going to happen, did anything surprise you?
I don't think I was surprised by it. I think I fully expected it. And the longer the war went, the more it seemed to intensify. But what's interesting is that with the war declining, with the hostages released, with the pullback from at least part of Gaza, that wave of anti-Israel activity didn't subside. And with the revolution in Iran, we didn't see those voices come out to support the Iranians. And that kind of cuts to the hypocrisy of it all. So that's why I'm not surprised, because I know who we're dealing with. This so-called Free Palestine movement doesn't want Iranians to be free. And that says a lot. And so, you mentioned that we were talking about the idea that once Israel goes in to rescue the hostages, that anti-Semitism would increase. But the truth of the fact is that even before they went in, we had demonstrations on Times Square October 7th. We had people rally to support the people of Gaza. On October 7th, nothing had happened to the people of Gaza, and Hamas was still fully intact. These were pro-Hamas rallies. They were ready to give backing to the attacks that happened on October 7th. That's what they were supporting. And so actually, Douglas Murray is a friend of ours, and he's spoken about this as being a moment where a flare goes up and suddenly everything is lit up. You suddenly see where everyone is standing. So what I would like us to do as a community, and what I would like the world to do, is to remember where everyone was standing at this time, because you saw masks slip. People were standing and supporting the massacres and the rapes and the violence on October 7th. They have to own that. Those people are supporting the the Islamic Republic regime in Iran. They have to own that. So we have to make sure that they do.
It's amazing. And even after I'd say the hostages are back and a lot of the war in Gaza is, finished, like there was the Grammys this week, and, they obviously was mentioned that, Billie Eilish mentioned that, about
Immigration
stolen land.
Yes, stolen land.
They never failed to mention that, but nothing about Iran. It's incredible.
Yeah,
It's
look,
unbelievable.
most celebrities are ignorant.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop them speaking out on causes that they think are cool. And there's been a massive propaganda campaign convincing people that this cause of free Palestine is cool. Now, you can support Palestinian people and you can support Israeli people at the same time. It is possible to hold those two thoughts in one's mind. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go to supporting terrorists post-October 7th. That's crazy. You have the celebrities with that bloody hands logo on their pin. Well, that is inspired by the lynching that happened in the year 2000, when Israelis were literally torn to pieces with Palestinians' bare hands. And there was a famous photo that went around the world on front pages of newspapers all around the world of the bloody hands of these murderers. And so you don't need to take that position, but of course, too many celebrities do. We need to call them out on that.
It's incredible that they can just openly walk around with a pin with a bloody hand and... I mean, I wonder if they know what it means and the meaning behind it. Or
too many of them do, believe me. And if they didn't before, then they see on social media. So do they remove it? No, then they have to own it. And, you see praise for terrorists. You see all of this kind of hero worship of some of the most egregious people. And so we need to call them out.
100%. And so Stand With Us does a lot of work on college campuses. And we've seen students having to lock themselves in classrooms to protect themselves from pro-Palestinian protests. So where should a Jewish student today draw the line between being openly and proudly Zionistic and worrying about their safety? Like, what would you tell the college student?
Yeah, that's such a painful question, because inherent in that question is the idea that in 2026, Jewish students need to choose between their safety and their identity. And that should not be the case. So we should not allow that. That should be a clear red line. Now, no student should ever put themselves in a dangerous situation. We want them to be safe. But we have to hold the feet to the fire of the administrations, university administrations, of all officials, that they have to keep their Jewish students safe. In the last campus year, 73% of Jewish students in America said they'd experienced anti-Semitism for themselves. And I'm sure that number is the same or higher in many other countries around the world. And Stand With Us operates in the UK, in South Africa, in Australia, in Brazil, in Holland, many other places. And we see this to be the case. And so no Jewish student should have to make that choice. And that's why it's important that we have a legal division that takes Title VI cases in the US, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act that says you cannot discriminate against people on the basis of their identity. These demonstrations, these acts, these violent acts, swastikas on campuses, making life unbearable for Jewish students, that is discrimination. And so if a university campus in America is found that there is this pervasive atmosphere of anti-Semitism on the campus, they can lose federal funds. And so we need to insist on that. We need to work with administrations on college campuses, in high schools, and others in public bodies so they understand what anti-Semitism is. You know, often people don't understand what anti-Semitism is. So we have the gold standard definition. It's the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, that people understand what anti-Semitism is and act against it. So that's really important that we put that in place. And finally, I would say that not all Zionists are Jews. So non-Jewish people should be able to express their Zionism as well. We have wonderful Hindu friends. We have wonderful Christian friends. By the way, we have Muslim friends who support Israel against the Islamist extremists. No one is more at threat from Islamism than Muslims themselves who are moderate. And so we need them to be able to feel safe as well in expressing their Zionism. And one of the things that I would encourage young Jews particularly is not to despair. Despair is not a strategy. We have more friends than you think. We have more allies than you think. And so be proud. You should be able to express your Jewish identity. You should be able to express your love of Israel, which is part and parcel of Jewish identity. And far too few people in the big wide world understand that. And so that should always be the case. And so they should be able to feel proud of who they are and their connection to Israel.
Thank you. And I remember, I'm not sure which university it was, but it was either Columbia or maybe Harvard even, that they took the professor or someone to court for the anti-Semitism. And I remember thinking, like, it's unbelievable. Like, it's so clearly anti-Semitic. Like, if it was Black Lives Matter or any other situation, we wouldn't even think about it. But they had to take the professor or whoever it was or the university to court for it when it was so clear what was happening to the Jewish students or the Zionists on the campus. And I mean, like, it's really incredible, and it is, like, it's probably very scary for a non-Jew to have to, if they believe that, you know, Israel's in the right, to, you know, call themselves a Zionist, because as Jews, you know, we still are scared, but, you know, we're more proud. But if you're not Jewish, to say that, you know, you're a Zionist, you don't have to say you're a Zionist. You can easily get away with not saying you're a Zionist. So
yeah, and
it makes
many
it so
do.
much harder.
And I think there's a silent majority of people that do support Israel. And look, if you support Jewish self-determination in their ancestral homeland, then you're a Zionist. It's as simple as that. That's what Zionism is. Our enemies would like to make it a dirty word. We have to reclaim it and not allow them to. If you support Jews living independently and safely in their ancestral homeland, the place they are indigenous to, hey, you're a Zionist.
You're a Zionist, yeah. They need to come to terms with it.
Mm-hmm.
And does it sometimes feel that you're just preaching to the choir, or do you see the impact of change on people who think differently? And have you ever had an experience where you were talking to someone who doesn't support Israel and you've, like, helped them see the situation in a new light?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, preaching to the choir is important. Okay, if the choir don't know the words, they can't sing. So sometimes you have to help them to understand their own reality, help them, give them the words to express it. So we do definitely preach to the choir. However, we had 2.3 billion interactions on our social media since just in the last year. And so, you know, are there 2.3 billion Jews in the world? Halavai, we wish there were. So we're definitely reaching beyond the bubble and reaching into many different communities. And so that's super important to all of our work. So it is possible to reach people. You know, years ago, I was in Washington, D.C., and I met someone who'd been on one of our trips here to Israel. Every year, our Stand With Us Israeli fellows run these projects to kind of elevate Israel in the world. And one of the projects that they did was to bring student government leaders from across the United States to come to Israel and see it for themselves. Okay. And so years later, I was in DC and I met this guy. His name's Sebastian. He came over to me. He said, "Michael, can I speak to you for a moment?" I said, "Sure." I said, good to see you. He said, good to see you too. I need to tell you something. I've wanted to tell you for a while. I lied to you. I said, okay, what do you mean you lied to me? He said, well, I knew when you were recruiting for this trip to come to Israel that you were trying to get people who are on the fence about Israel or pro-Israel. And I wasn't on the fence about Israel or pro-Israel. I hated Israel. I said, okay. Why did you want to come to Israel? Why did you want to come on the trip? He said, I hated Israel and I wanted to come on the trip to see the apartheid and the racism for myself. But when I came there, I saw what Israel really is. I saw the society. I fell in love with it. I saw the diversity. I understood it. And actually, I stopped hating Israel. And now I call myself a Zionist.
Wow.
So we
That's
hired
incredible.
him. We hired Sebastian. True story. He became part of our Hispanic outreach to Christians. And it just shows you, I had no idea when he was on the trip that he hated Israel. I had no idea that he changed his opinion so drastically while he was in Israel.
Maybe he just said he'd get the job.
Maybe but you can't maintain that job though, and feel like that. But many years later, I understood the change it would make. So sometimes we see the difference immediately, and sometimes it takes a lot longer. But yes, you can affect people.
And you mentioned before about like the choir needs to know
Sure.
the words, and the amount of Jews I see on social media that say anti-Semitism is not the same as anti-Zionism, and just because I'm a Jew doesn't mean I'm a Zionist. And it really, it reminded me of that there are so many Jews that are trying to, make it seem like, they're not Zionists, and you can be Jewish without being a Zionist. And, it's so important to get through to them that like we only have one Jewish country, and how important it is for them.
Yeah, those guys are the minority, by the way.
Yeah,
They would like to pretend that they represent Jews. They're the vast, vast minority. They may have loud voices and they get amplified by the anti-Israel side. But 95% plus of Jews support Israel globally and therefore are Zionists. And so we mustn't let those guys represent us.
They're just very loud.
Yes. Well, we'll counter them.
Yeah. Is there a certain misconception about Israel that triggers you more than others?
Oh gosh, where to start? You mentioned it before about all the things that were being thrown at Israel post October the 7th, and that really is par for the course. So they won't just say Israel is doing something wrong, or I disagree with what Israel's doing. They will always go to the most extreme charge. It can't be that I don't like the way this war is going. It's genocide.
It's genocide,
right?
Yeah. Black or white.
Yeah.
There's
there may be, inequality in Israeli society, like which society isn't, right? There may be some inequality. It's apartheid, right? They always go to the most egregious example. Now, why do they do this? Because it tracks better for them. It gets amplified more. And also because they want to stick it in our face. We are a people who was dispossessed. We are a people that was oppressed. We are a people that was dispersed all around the world. And we are a people that actually suffered an actual and real genocide. So they take that and invert it like they do with the Holocaust, right? They call us Nazis. They call Israel's leaders Nazis. What could be more perverse than that? To take Jewish pain and turn it back and put it in your face. So it's very deliberate strategy. And we have to, cope with that strategy. But we have to understand why they say these things. It's not because they're true. It's because it's the most egregious and painful way to kind of stick a finger in the eye of the Jewish people. So all of these charges, obviously, I have no time for them. What I do want people to know is what Israelis are really like and what Israel is really like. The best way, of course, is to come here and understand it for yourself. But Israelis are amazing people. They're beautiful people. They're a diverse people. They're a tapestry from all the different backgrounds they come from. They have, reinvigorated the Hebrew language and this land to make it a thriving democracy, civilization, and business center that gives incredible gifts to the entire world. And Israelis themselves are amazing, strong, resilient, as I wrote about in a book that you mentioned. And so I want people to really understand who Israelis are. So whenever I'm talking to Israelis about how they talk about Israel online, I always say the most important letter I in the word Israel isn't the one at the beginning, it's the one you place at the end and turn Israel into Israeli. Talk about just your own personal life. When we were interviewing the very first year for our Stand With Us Fellowship, our campus program, we had interviews day and night for people who wanted to be in the program, and Israelis would sit down, and this is like post-army university students. They would sit down and they would tell me their stories, right? And in a very kind of matter-of-fact way. So my father was from Iraq. My mother was from Eastern Europe. This part of my family fled in persecution. This is the kibbutz we come from. This is how we, built our family business. This is how we survived and thrived over the years. This is what I did in the army. They would just tell me incredible things. And then in a very Israeli way, at the end of it, they would say, and that's it. And I'd be like, whoa, you just told me so many incredible things. Like, imagine if you could just expose a big audience to just part of that story. So that's what I like it when we, I like the most when we do that. We shine a light on who Israelis really are. This incredible, is resilient, I call, people who've overcome great adversity and are just doing amazing things in the world.
So everyone must just come to Israel. And
That's
then
the answer.
And then they can make up their minds. No. And Michael, our final question, what motivates you to keep going, even though most of the world is against Israel?
So first of all, I don't believe that. Okay, I genuinely don't. I think that the media may be against Israel, and I think that certain people in halls of power may be against Israel with an agenda. And so how do we cope with that? I think most people are fair-minded and they're willing to listen. They're just often presented with bad information. So how do we push back against that? Well, the story of Israel is the story of the Jewish people. We are 0.2% of the world's population. We're nothing in the global scheme of things, and yet we've always punched above our weight. We have this high proportion of Nobel Prize winners. We give incredible gifts to the world. We've always, helped the societies we live in to thrive, been loyal citizens wherever we are. And Israel does a lot for the region and for the world in many spheres, from medical to innovation, etc. And so for me, there's no option. I feel very blessed. Sure, on the one hand, I get to see the very worst of, anti-Semitism where people are, but I get to see the very best of what Israel really is, and that's what keeps me going. So the more that we can tell that story about this incredible nation, I think we've got a very bright future, and we have the ability to do that through social media. We can level the playing field, we can get to people, we can shine a light on what's real, and as soon as they do, it's like, whoa, I can see again, right? I can understand what I'm seeing, and I learn to appreciate what Jews really are and what Israel really is. So I think the future is bright for this country. I think we have a safer, securer, and more prosperous future ahead of us, and I think that people will fall in line and respect that. We're tough, let's own it, but we're also amazing people as well. Let's show people who we really are.